Kakadosh Boker or Masechet Batra Daf Yomi Daf Kuf Nun Bet Amud Aleph 152a1. We already know that if a person gives all his properties as a shchimera, he does not need to make. They do not need to make a kinyan. It's matanat shchimera, and therefore they acquire everything. And if he does get better, obviously he acquires everything back. What about the other way around? When it's only going to be a partial claim, meaning that he only gave part of his properties. So let's start. Itmar, it was stated, Matanat Shchimera Shekatuba Kinyan. If there's going to be a shtar Matanat Shchimera that was written a Kinyan in it for this Matana, Beirav Mishmed de Rav Amre. So the Academy of Rav, they said in the name of Rav, Arkeveatre Richshe. The Shchimera went and he put the Matana on two different horses. What does that mean? Two different kochot. It's a koch of a Shchimera and a koch of Matana Bari. What does that mean? Right? That means mitzad echad, it's like a shchimera, because that's what he's giving it as a matanat shchimera. But mitzad sheni, they're like a bari, which means that you need to do a kinyan. Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel comes and he says, Lo yadana mayadumba. I don't know what I'm going to actually judge in such a case when it has both of the different lishonot. So let's see. So bar berav mishmed rav amri arkev. He says harei kematana bari. It's like a matana bari, matana shchimina. Harei matana bari, it's going to be like a matana bari. Shim amad, that if he gets better and uchozer, it doesn't retract, right? And therefore, that's what we're trying to say. That's what you're trying to add. Harei matana shchimina, and it's going to be like a matana shchimina. Sheim amad va'ato leploni, halva'ato leploni. That if the person comes and he says that it's going to become an halva'ah to this certain person, it's going to be a halva'ah to that person, which means it's going to be acquired just like Matanat Shchimena, and therefore it's going to be done, right? They could acquire the halva'ah through him as well. That is what we just said in the Academy of Rav. Now Shmuel said, I don't know what we're going to come and we're going to start judging. What does that mean? I don't know what we're going to come and start judging. So he comes and he says, right, as follows. Yeah, he comes and he says as follows. He says, because maybe he didn't want to finish doing the gemar, the kinyan, only through the shtar. Now, there's no such thing as a shtar after mitah. Meaning, if the person would have come and he would have done a kinyan beforehand, that's one thing. But if he wrote it in the shtar, so then the shtar was a kinyan. But 1 second, there's no shtar achar mitah. So for the matana, it's not going to be chal. So how does it work then? So Verami de Rava, the Rav, Shmuel and Shmuel. We're going to ask a contradiction from Rav to Rav and from Shmuel to Shmuel. Yeah, what does that mean? He comes and he says like this: the Shalich Ravin Nishmed Rabbi Yavu. He sent Rav in the name of Rabbi Yavu. Hevu Yadeh, you should know Shalach Rabbi Lazar Gula Mishum Rabenu, that Rabbi Lazar sent in the Gula in the name of Rabenu, name of Rav. Shchiv Merah She'amar, a Shchiv Merah that comes and says, Kitvu Tnu Maneh LePloni, write and give this Maneh to Ploni. Vemet, and he dies. Yeah, he comes, he dies before it was actually written, before it was given over. En kotvin, we're not going to write venotnin, and we're going to give it. Shema lo gamar laknoto. Yeah, that's the right one, by the way. Babata. Yeah. Shema kufnun bet. Yeah. Shema lo gamar laknoto. Ela bishtar. Because maybe he only wanted to come and to make him get the kinyan through a shtar. There's no shtar after death. Amar Rav Yehuda Shmuel says, Shmuel, Hilchata, what is halacha? Kotvin. We are going to come and we are going to, right? He comes and he says like this. He says, Hilchata, what is halacha? We do write the shtar. The notrima, we do give it even after the death of the shchimera. And the reason why is because it was given to liyapot et kocho, not ligroa mimenu. Meaning the only purpose why this was given to him was not to make it worse for him, to make it better, to give him a stronger hand. So therefore, not because, right, the person died and he wrote him a document, it becomes worse. The opposite. Why did he write him a document? So he's got a much stronger possession in the fields. So if he's got now much more stronger possession, that's why that they're going to write it even though the person died. So he says the question, a contradiction between Rav and Shmuel and Shmuel. The Rav lo kasha, it's not a contradiction. He says 1 second. Rav, when Rav comes and he says Matana Shchimena that you're going to be written a kinyan, you made the kinyan, you did the kinyan. So since you did the kinyan, obviously it was liapot et koach. It was trying to give you a stronger how do you say ipui koach in English? Power of attorney. There you go. Yeah, some people they know very, very well. Yeah, so all of a sudden, right, he comes and he says, right? This entire concept. So he says, ha, de lo kanu mineh. But he says here, they don't know. Yeah, they don't know. So he says, what do you mean? That means they didn't make any kinyan. So if they did not make any kinyan, obviously didn't do anything. The opposite, I'm going to have kavanah that he only wanted it to be acquired with the shtar. And the Shmuel Kashya, and for Shmuel and Shmuel, it's also not going to be a Kashya, because he comes and he says this. In the second case, when Shmuel says it was going to be Matana Kayemet, we're talking about in a document which was Miapet Kocho. And therefore, the Shechimina comes and he commanded that the shtar should add on to the present to give him a stronger hand, right? And therefore, in such a case, it's not just a kinyan in itself. It's actually much more like a re'ayah than a kinyan. The kinyan was already done. It was much more like a proof, as if to say. Okay? Fine. What does that mean?
Shmuel said that he wants that the kinyan would be effect.
No, because it all depends on the language of the shtar. He says if the language, the terminology in the shtar, in the document was of lashon yipui koach, then you're right, 100%. So maybe he was giving him matana through the kinyan, but it all depends on what's written in the document. So that's what it's Shmuel is saying. Okay, fine. Next, Yativ Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak achoted de Rava. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak was sitting from behind Rava. Yativ Rava coming to Rav Nachman. Rava was in front of Rav Nachman. Kabba Mines, he asked him the question, Mi amar Shmuel, the Shmuel says, Shema lo gamalak notola bishtar, that maybe you're only going to acquire with a document, and there's no shtar la'achar mitah. Shmuel says, Rav Yudin Shmuel, Shchimera, shekatav kol nechasav le'achirim. When you have a Shchimera that writes all his properties to somebody else, Af al pi shekanu miyado, even though they came and they acquired it from him, Amad, if he gets better, Jose. Everything comes back to him. Meaning, even though they do kinyan, mamash, they come and they do kinyan. It doesn't matter. He got up. Now, the truth is, though, that it was written. It's written, all of them. Yeah, but that's what we already learned. Okay, it's written kol nechasav. So kol nechasav, we already said that for sure it's going to go back to him. Right? What? All. Because you, no, not the portion, exactly. We're not talking about the portion. All, everything. So kuf mem nun bet amubet. So he says, biadua shelo ya kinyan ele mechvat amitah. So therefore, it's for sure that there was not going to be kinyan only because of the death, and therefore he could retract. So it comes out that according to Shmuel, it comes out that dafka, the shchimena that gets up, he could be choser. But if he dies, so that's it. Even though they came and they made the kinyan, so he says, but this is a stira to what you just said. You told me before that the kinyan is only going to be, that the kinyan is not going to be chal because it's only in the document. And here it's mashma that no, you already made a kinyan. One more time, it only retracts why? Because he's alive, meaning he gets better. Mashma, if he dies, what happens? Right? 1 second, but why? He says it's mashma. I thought that you were only going to be acquiring with the document. And if you don't have the document, I mean the document is going to be after death. Doesn't help. Yeah.
Did they make a kinyan before he died in this case?
No, so here they didn't make a kinyan. He wanted that the shtar should be the kinyan. Now, if the shtar is going to be a kinyan, he didn't do anything. It's after death, so it's nothing. So ve'achvi lebiyadei, he showed with his hand, v'ishtik, and he kept quiet. He gave him a hint. So Kikam, when Rava got up and he went out from Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman Yitzchak to Rava, he told Rava, "My achvi lecha." What did Rav Nachman show you? Elmaleh, he says, "V'miyapeh letukocho." He gave him a hint that he was being miyapeh the koach, meaning the shchimena came and he wanted the kinyan to add on to the matana bal peh, not to show that this is the kinyan. Meaning like this. You remember we already mentioned that a shchimena, when he gives his properties, whatever he said, that's already done. It's a done deal. And you're right. Obviously, if he becomes better, he takes it back. But okay, fine. Whatever he says, it's a done deal. Why then does he need to come and say, you know what? I want to write it down in a document. And let me get witnesses and write it down. Why am I doing that? That's only liapet kocho. Liapet kocho means I'm only just making his hands stronger. So if somebody comes and he says, "What are you doing in this field? This belonged to this guy. Misken. Look what you did to him. You killed him. You probably prayed for him to die, and all of a sudden now you're taking all the properties." No. He gave it to me already. So why do I have a document? To make sure that anybody that will ever come to me, I have a document. It's much stronger. It's much stronger than just somebody give me a present. You understand? So he says, what's the case? Amar Rav Chasta, bekanina mine mosif al matnat ladah. We bought from him the nechasim which was added, which was going to be done balpeh with this matana. which means, and that's what Shmuel is modeh, that behemet it's going to be acquired. Okay, so says
why shouldn't it be acquired?
No, because we had the Sfarav saying that the entire purpose of this document was in order to make a kinyan. So it's in order to make a kinyan. When does it hand over? After death. And kinyan lachamita.
But he gave him the document.
He gave him the document, but too late. It's already after death. That's a problem.
Because he did the document.
Because he did the document. So then that's the question. What is the document? You don't need a document. So what are you doing a document for? So there's two ways to look at it. Either the document comes to strengthen your hand, or it's bechavana in order to show, I want you to make a kinyan through the document. And that's the only way to make a kinyan. Now the problem with that one is that if it only comes to his hand after death, then kinyan lachamita.
Lessens his power.
Yes, it lessens the power. So it depends on the language which was written on the document. Okay.
Is it depending on the language, or is it the way we look?
That's obvious. Katav lezeh ve'katav lezeh. You remember we already saw this case where a person came and he retracted. So he wrote to Mr. A, and all of a sudden he comes, he writes everything to Mr. B. So he says, "Hainu d'chiyat Rav Dimi ma daitiki v'atel daitiki." That's like a will is going to annul another will, right? Tzava is annulling another tzava. Katav ve'zika lezeh, katav ve'zika lezeh. If he wrote at the beginning all his properties, and he was mizakeh otam to one person, and then he wrote all his property to somebody else, he was mizakeh otam to the second person, right? What happens there? So Rav says, Rishon kana Shmuel amar sheni kana. Machloket. The first one or the second one? Rav says that the first one is kana because it's like matanan bari, and that's why he cannot retract, right? Because basically what happened was that since in matanot where the presents were given, like a matanat shchimera, that they have a kinyan, so therefore the shchimera cannot be retracting, right, and give it to somebody else. Shmuel comes and he says, no. The second person acquires it. Why? It's matana shchimera, but she could always retract. So says the Gemara, but one second, we already learned that this was already a machlok between them. They argued already about this. So he says, this is what it means to say. The itmar beha, if it was only written in this one, which is going to be the case of right on matanat shchimera, which is written a kinyan, behakam, and here it's written because they made a kinyan. So he says aval beha, but in a case where there's no kinyan dan de lo kanumine, I would say that he's going to be modeh to Shmuel, right? That really bemet you don't need a yipui koach, you don't need anything. Ve'it mar beha, and if it was only written the other way around, beha kama Shmuel. In this case, Shmuel comes and he says, right, that you're going to come and you're going to have matarat shchimera and everything else. He says behach, but in the first case, when it's going to be done in kinyan avur mekabel, it would say he was going to be modeh to Rav. So tzricha, that's why we need both machlokot. Okay, fine. Besura matnuhachi, mevududi matnuhachi. In Surah they taught one way, from Badida they taught another way. Amar Rav Yomi bar Abba shalach le'mei b'Rav l'Shmuel Yelamdenu Rabbeinu Shchim Elash Kadol Nechasav L'Achirim V'Kanu Miyado Ma'u. What if they actually came and they made a acquisition as well? And he wasn't just enough that he went and he said, "I'm giving all these properties away." He came and made an acquisition. So shalach lehu, they went and they sent enachar kinyan klum. There's nothing. What does that mean? Since besides the mesirat hashtad, also they made a kinyan. He says the shchimera cannot retract. That means that's it. It's already too late because he did like the double strength. So savur mineh, he thought to say, right, that tanimina, one of these words, leacher, to another person, but if it was to himself, I would say he's for sure he's allowed to retract. Samalu Rav Chasta says Rav Chasta, right? Kiata Ravuna mikfuri, when he came from Kfuri Prishua, he explained it. Leatzmo, ben leatzmo, ben lachidim. Doesn't matter whether he actually sold it to himself and he gave it back to himself or gave it to somebody else, right? It comes out that what? That since he thought that he was going to acquire it, he was mechaven liapot koach, so therefore obviously he cannot take it back.
If he recovers.
Which one?
If he recovers.